Hello again, everybody. We are back, and it's a pleasure for me to present to you Laura Rodríguez, who is Director Data Science at Novartis, which is one of our sponsors. Laura has always been fascinated by the power of computer science, and her enthusiasm has taken her so far. The starting point was studying computer engineering in Madrid up to a PhD in the field at the University of Stuttgart. Expert on data science and machine learning, she held for 2 years the position of manager of predictive analytics in finance. Afterward, she reached her current position as a director of data science in digital finance at Novartis. Even more, she has been publishing articles as a specification and verification of security in reconfigurable scan networks or a neural network-based fault classifier, among many other articles. Hello, Laura. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here today with us. It's all yours. You can start whenever you want.
Thank you for your kind words. Actually, I'm going to start with that enthusiasm about computer science and computer engineering that you were mentioning, because it turns out for a long time during my teenage years, I was actually convinced that I would end up in the healthcare world, but actually as a doctor. So for a long time, I thought I would end up pursuing studies of medicine, and that I would, end up being a surgeon or so. And at some point, while I was still a kid, my dad made a comment. I cannot remember the context of this comment. It was really kind of just as an anecdote, but I do remember the joking tone of his voice saying, but computers are very stupid. They just actually only know zeros and ones. And it was just meant as a joke. And I completely forgot it. Again, I cannot remember the context of this comment, but then when I was something like 15 and I was home one evening chatting with my friends through Microsoft Messenger, because this is how we used to do it back then, this comment suddenly came back to me. And I thought, wow, so I'm here home. I'm double clicking on the name of a friend or on the nick, and this stupid machine realizes that it needs to open one window with me, one window in my friend's place, so on their screen, and not just on any user. It's actually the correct user, and I can send messages and receive messages back. And for some reason, this completely blew my mind. And after years of thinking that I would end up in medicine and studying biology and anatomy and physiology, that very moment, I felt this urge of understanding. I needed to know how it was possible. And that minute changed it. I decided to go for computer science, and it was computer science ever since. So sure enough, I started my studies. I got my fair share of math, of physics, because this is all what computer science is based on. Then you get your programming, your operating systems, your networks, AI, computer architecture, all kinds of things. And indeed, as many challenges as each of these disciplines present, what amazed me at the time was still this, oh my God, it's all working together. Like they're actually managing to create a device. Now we even have more, right? With tablets and smartphones and things that you put in your pocket, and still manage to bring all of these worlds together to actually work and create something meaningful. And this for me was an incredible drive. I thought I was part of something fantastic. I also specialized in one of those branches, which is the cause for the very complicated titles in the articles that I published back then. And for me, it was computer architecture. I enjoyed my time in research thoroughly. I think it's fantastic to have a job in which your job is learning all the time and trying to push the boundaries. So this was great. But when I was done with my PhD, it was time to choose whether I wanted to continue in academia or I wanted to go to the industry. And what tilted the scale towards going to industry was actually that I wanted to see how the things that I was thinking and developing and creating were being applied. I wanted to have an idea of what was really the applicability. I wanted to be close to the people who were actually using it. I wanted to get feedback. I wanted to know what the impact of my work was. And so I started my search and I landed at finance in Novartis, which would definitely not have been among my top guesses when I first started looking for a job. But so far, it's been a very rewarding experience because I have been part and I have witnessed an incredible transformation in the function of a big company. So to see how things have changed since I joined up to today has also been incredible and very energizing. And I have three key learnings or three key ingredients that I have seen of this transformation. The first one has been the diversity in terms of technical profiles that you need to actually pull something like this successfully. So at the very beginning, with a data scientist, you can just build a model, a POC, see if it works, if it's viable. But as much interest as the machine learning models raise, they are actually only useful if you are able to deploy them in operations. So you need to ensure that they are in operations and they deliver business value. And this is how they become really something powerful and successful. And to do so, well, I had the need, of course, of increasing the people we had. You have a data scientist, but you also very quickly need data engineers, if not even before. You also very quickly realize that software engineers would be great, DevOps engineers would be great. You need to create also tools so that the user can consume the information that you're creating. So you get all of your developers for visualization, you have front end, back end, like a whole landscape of technical profiles that was maybe not very obvious at the very beginning of the journey. And in the broader community, there seems to have been a very similar evolution, because where before we had all of this model-centric AI, we now have lots of conversations about data-centric AI, meaning we don't just simply throw whatever data we have to the data scientist and expect them to fix it, but we actually, or the community has realized we need to put real effort and real concentration on creating a useful asset, which would be the data. We need to be careful from the beginning and not just solve whatever issues come afterwards when you are applying the model. This has also been in parallel evolving with things like the specializations you can now find when you want to study something related to machine learning. Previously, you had all sorts of flavors in terms of machine learning, right? You had your general machine learning courses. You also had maybe something specialized in neural networks or on deep learning or on optimizers, something very, very specific, all kinds of flavors, you name it, but always very machine learning specific. What we are seeing now is that there's also a lot of focus, for instance, on MLOps or DevOps or industrialization. It can take different names, but it's now a real need that we realize we either we do this or a product in machine learning will not really make it into the market and into production. It's very important. And it's not just a matter of talks or a matter of what you can study, but there are even research pieces dedicated to actually optimizing this. There was a paper in 2021 with a corresponding code published by Facebook Research with the University of Washington. And they do something that may look trivial, and that's reducing the number of bits that you need to save the state of an optimizer from 32 to 8. Doesn't look a priori like an incredible achievement, but the fact is they have proved that it's possible to do it keeping the same accuracy. And this means when you are really dealing with big data, this can be a game changer. This can decide whether you actually have the infrastructure to put the system into production or you don't. There was also a very famous competition that I like to use a lot as an example, and that was Netflix in 2006, so already quite some years ago. They issued a competition promising a $1 million prize for whichever team was able to reduce the error in terms of the expected rating of the user by 10 percentage points. So they had their algorithm, they had their approach, they were at a certain level, they published what their accuracy was, and they said, if you're able to bring it down by 10 percentage points, there goes the $1 million. And 1 year into the competition, there was a team that managed 8 percentage point reduction. So that was close enough, good enough, not quite the target. And Netflix actually implemented that situation, that approach. So they really brought it in. They needed to adjust because, again, it's not the same to develop something for a competition than to deal with the real volume of Netflix. So they had in the competition maybe something like 100,000 ratings, when in fact Netflix was dealing with 5 billion. And of course, in the competition, you have a static data set, and Netflix needed to account for the fact that they would be getting new data all the time, and they would need to incorporate that also into the model. But aside of this, they were able to overcome this fairly okay, and the solution was brought into production. What is interesting, though, is that sometime later, when the competition was actually closed, the winner was a different team. There was actually a team who managed to bring down the error by these 10 percentage points that were the goal of Netflix. And it turned out this solution was not implemented because even though from a machine learning, from a data science perspective, the solution was good and valid, and Netflix in their blog, they write it was a great solution, they could not justify the engineering costs that would be associated with it for these 2 additional percentage points of improvement. This was one of the reasons. There was also a second reason, and this brings me to my second key learning that I have had in these years. Mind the gap. And by this I mean mind the business gap. When Netflix issued the competition, they were mainly a business based on DVD renting. And sometime later, they have moved. I mean, right now, no one takes DVDs from Netflix, right? We all just stream. So their business model had changed. And it's very key to always keep connected to business. This is very, very important. When I first joined the finance team where I am, I had no idea whatsoever what a P&L looked like. No idea. So my finance team, needed to upskill me just in the same way that I needed to upskill them, so that we can then together devise what kind of products would make sense, what would be a reasonable transformation, how can we do things differently altogether. So to lead this real transformation, this is what you need to do. And also because very often we present results or we present dashboards, and we also need to be very, very clear with our users on what that means and what they can infer from what they are seeing. There's also a very nice example from AstraZeneca within the pharma industry. Roughly, and quite consistently across the pharma industry, from every 10 molecules that go into the later stages of clinical trials, you just make one commercial product, one viable commercial product. Okay, this is quite consistent across pharma company in late stages. Now, in the mid-2000s, AstraZeneca was not doing great in terms of their R&D margins and costs. They were having lots of costs and not getting enough products that were viable. And so, well, they had this, there is this correlation, right, of 10-1. If I have 10 molecules, then one of them will come out viable. So if I want to increase the number of products that I launch, one more or less obvious conclusion would be maybe I can simply create more molecules. And so they went into this strategy, they took this decision to incentivize the volume of molecules that was being created in AstraZeneca. How did they do it? Well, instead of creating new molecules independently, what they tried to do was to generate more backup molecules. What is a backup molecule? Usually you have a lead molecule that you trust is a promising approach. And sometimes when you have a lot of trust in this activation mechanism, you create a backup molecule with that same activation mechanism, but maybe with a different compound. For instance, in case you have low bioavailability of the compound of the lead molecule, or it's very hard to manufacture for whatever reason. And then if that is the case, you can very quickly switch to the backup molecule to see if indeed a viable product would come up. The problem of creating backup molecules that are essentially identical, which is what happened with this incentive of creating more molecules, which are essentially identical to the lead molecule, is that this correlation that was found of 10 to 1 no longer really holds, because this applied when molecules were created with a different criterion. So you wanted to look for the most promising molecule, not create a large volume there. And unfortunately, they were able to create many more molecules with this strategy. This part held, but the number of viable products did not improve. And so in 2011, they needed to conduct a really deep root cause analysis, which would be investigating more the causality than the correlation that they had been looking at before, to really take a managerial decision that would change the company. And well, I would say so far we can agree that they are being pretty successful. So this for me is very key, because you cannot just present a dashboard or some results to your users. You need to explain to them what it means in the same way that they need to explain to you how their business is, what matters, what doesn't matter, and what can you do about it, what is actionable and what's not, in order to both of you have a full picture. This kind of bridging profiles are, in my opinion, still very scarce. So it's still hard to bring a business and the technical people to understand each other. It is possible, and for me, it's also a very beautiful part of the whole project, because it really creates something new from two disciplines that are interesting, and it pushes both of them forward. So this is one of my, I would say, favorite pieces, and also something that energizes me a lot. This being able to create something new in a different discipline. So having computer science as a tool to move things forward. And then there is a third point, and this one, sometimes it's a bit of a cliche, I would say. But the third point, the third key thing for me has been the team here. If you have watched The Last Dance, this documentary on Netflix about Michael Jordan, probably yes, because it's one of the most watched ones, so this is probably not new content for anyone. A superstar like Michael Jordan talks in one of the first episodes about Scottie Pippen. And he says, well, it's not that he agreed with everything Scottie did, obviously, and there's some criticism to him too, but he says something like, Scottie was my best teammate ever. I never won without Scottie. So even an acknowledged superstar, we all know Michael Jordan is fantastic, there's no question about it. Even for him, it was key to have the right people next to him. And, it had me thinking, because I thought, okay, what does it mean to actually have the right people? In the biography of Steve Jobs, which is very interesting, they explain a lot of all of his evolution, right? Since he was working in this garage, trying to develop some product with his friend Wozniak, and until he founded, Apple, and he was kicked out, then he came back in, and so on. And throughout all of this adventure, he had teams with which he thrived. So he was able to push them, to motivate them, to inspire them, to bring them forward, to create fantastic things. And there were times when it didn't work out, and he was either kicked out or he left. And I have no question that Steve Jobs was a visionary. I mean, he had an incredible intuition for things that would work. He was undoubtedly able to create a very successful company. He was able to rescue it when it was not going so great, and he came back to it. So he was able to relaunch it, not just create it, but actually relaunch it. And I think this is fantastic. But it had me thinking, would I have been able to work well with Steve Jobs? And the answer is very possibly no. I wouldn't have liked to work with him, and he probably wouldn't have liked to work with me either, because what makes a good team is the connection with the people. So he was able to inspire people to make them move to create great things. But I think it's also very important to ensure that when you go into a team, you don't expect a formed team. You should expect to also be clear in your mind on what works for you, bring it to the team, because every person, everyone that joins a team actually has power over the shape of it and over how it works. And this is very key, and has been also quite a learning for me, because I've realized that I work differently with different people and in different contexts. So my very personal recipe, but this is again not valid for everyone, is that when we approached the project, we didn't have any guarantee that it would work out. It was essentially a huge question mark, and we knew we wanted to try and that we would do our best, but we didn't really know if it was possible. There's this quote of Mark Twain that I like a lot, and it says, "They didn't know it was impossible, and so they went and did it." And this is a bit this can-do attitude of not having a mental barrier. This, for me, makes a team thrive. This is something that you can really work with, and that will make the whole thing successful. So if you can combine all the three things, you have the technical landscape, you have the business partners, and you have a team that works with an attitude that works for you, then this is how you can actually manage to bring a product into life. It's very important that all three are mixed, obviously. And for me, the experience has been that I never realized how hard change management would be, which is why this connection to business needs to happen, and you need to have the right people being curious about it. So really wanted to find out together if it's possible. And definitely do not be afraid of reshaping the team, the profiles, and the people you have involved in there. So today is still the 22nd of January, so we are in time for some New Year's resolutions still. And hopefully many people in this audience know who Andrew Ng is. He's a very well-known guy within the neural networks world. And he has this newsletter called The Batch that comes out every Wednesday. So in there, he presents the latest advancements of AI. I particularly like it because he always specifies why is it important. So he creates this link so that people understand the relevance of the discovery that he's presenting. But what I want to highlight today is that on the 30th of December 21, so just 3 weeks ago, he sent an issue talking about New Year's resolutions, indeed. And he said there are two types of New Year's resolutions. So you can have either an outcome-based New Year resolution, which would be, I want to finish my deep learning specialization, or you can have a process-based New Year's resolution, which would be, every week I want to study 4 hours of deep learning, right? It can come in any of these flavors. And so the title of this talk has the word impact with an exclamation mark. And this impact is not meant as the noun. It's actually more the imperative form of the verb to encourage whoever is listening. Unfortunately, I cannot see anyone because, well, the virtual setup has its cons, right? But take this impact as your New Year's resolution, and not just as an outcome based, but actually as a process based. No matter what kind of profile you are, whether you are listening as a data scientist, as a front-end developer, as a back-end developer, as anything else, whether you are junior or senior, and irrespective of whether you are looking for a more technical career path or you want to move into managerial or you're interested in bridging with business, in any of these cases, you have the skills and you are in the right position to actually make an impact in a world that's actually asking for these skills and it's asking for this kind of transformation. And be absolutely sure that you have all the space in the world to also impact how your team works and to make a better team that can drive all of this forward to really create incredible products and change how things are working. So this would be my last word, go impact, and I'm happy to receive your questions.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you very much. It has been a really interesting talk and also really inspirational. So I thank you for that. We have some questions, so I will forward to read them, and then you will be able to answer freely. First of all, how is that your contributions make impact globally, taking into account you work in Novartis?
Because first of all, I mean, when you impact somewhere, those people move also. So if I have an interaction, for instance, with someone from business, right? If I'm able to explain to them how data science works, what it means, they keep learning with me in the same way that I learn with them. So if I move to another company, I am no longer at the stage where I was almost 4 years ago when I joined Novartis. So I will know how to introduce this sort of transformation, and the business people I'm working with will also understand how to use data science. So it's like a wave, it spreads quickly. And the same thing for all of the other technical profiles. They will be more business savvy. They will have made mistakes, because we have made plenty of mistakes, and you can learn of all of those and take them wherever you go.
Thanks for your answer. What do you prefer, academia or industry?
Oof, very tough question, and it's a tough question because I loved from academia that your job is really like just stay at the edge, right? Know everything that's happening. And not just that, but I used to do quite some teaching. And the teaching I do miss also very much. This was also for me a very different way of creating impact. But up to today, I'm still in contact with some of my prior students, and I'm very happy to see them progressing. But I would say industry is fulfilling in the sense that you really meet also a lot of interesting people. It's not incompatible with innovation. It's not incompatible with keeping learning. So I think it's going to be industry for me.
Okay, thank you, because at the end you gave a concise answer.
Yes, but again, this is for me. If whoever posted the question is considering a PhD, go for it and enjoy. This would be my recommendation.
Then, what is the main task of a data science director?
Great question. It's actually on the management piece. So right now, what I try to do a lot, because fortunately we started off, well when I was hired, it was actually just me and my manager in terms of technical people. And now we have a team of something like 30 to 35 people. And this is just considering the closest roles to data science. So I'm not bringing here the front and back end developers who are part of a different team. I do a lot of management, so understanding what projects make sense. Do we want to go for this? Do we want to go for the other project? What keeps the team motivated? What keeps the business motivated? There's a lot of motivation from all kinds of people. And When I joined, I was actually looking forward to going into a direction of management. This is why my first position was like that. I like people, which is probably a strange facet in a computer scientist, but I do like people. So I spend a lot of time actually on the people, on everything that's important to keep them motivated, to keep them going, and also, of course, on the business people, on what interests them and how we can create this transformation.
Okay, great. And what does the mission of your team inside Novartis?
So we are transforming how finance works. We work very closely with finance. We are trying to change the processes and bring finance to a position in which they leverage data much more for decision making. We make it easy for them, accessible for them. This is also not always obvious that the data is available for everyone. So our mission is to really change how finance works through data and through well, better decisions via machine learning models.
Okay. Next question. What are the biggest learnings you have learned working in Novartis?
Wow, this one could be divided in fields, I would say. So I think one of the most important things is that you need to be ready to adjust. You need to be ready to admit this decision that I took or that I made was not the best. Let's change again. And it's you're going to find this because again, when we started doing this, there was no recipe. No one knew and no one could tell us how this would actually move forward because no one had done it before, at least within our company. And so we had to do a lot of trial and error. That made this team can do attitude so incredibly important, and not just from the technical profiles but actually also from our finance partners. This would be for me the biggest learning in terms of how to manage yourself. Be ready to fail, be ready to acknowledge failure, and be ready to correct course, and it will be fine. More on the technical part, I would say that still sometimes there are fundamental pieces that are being underestimated. So everyone knows you need data scientists for data science, but many times, and not just in Novartis, also in other companies that I've had chats with, the data is not ready. And if there's no data, it's very hard to do data science. So data infrastructure, now people start to be conscious and there are like full corporate strategies to achieve this. But before, I would say it's important to set the expectations when you start a project that data and infrastructure need to be there.
Okay, nice. Thank you. Another question. You said that sometimes it's difficult to make understand technical people with business people. Do you think that to hold leading positions in data science, you need to have both skills, I guess, technical and, and business?
I think you learn them. I mean, when I joined, I really, you cannot imagine how my lack of knowledge about the pharma industry, about finance, how incredibly big it was. I mean, I really had no idea. I didn't know what a P&L looked like. I didn't know how the pipeline of a product works. I didn't know. And I think when you learn it, and you understand the business people around you, you can also understand what their challenges are. And this puts you in a position where the products that you develop make more sense to them and where you can focus not just on a model itself, for instance, but what I have learned is when we make the model and what comes with it transparent, it just helps them so much more. And this is when you get the feedback that, hey, you're really working to change the way I'm doing things because now I understand. So do I think you need to be an expert? No, you don't need to be an expert, but you need to be open to listening and to learning. And I think it's an inevitable consequence that you will end up understanding the world you are trying to link. You can also go for a more technical profile. There are also plenty of leading roles in data science that are more on the, I don't know, deep learning expert. In that case, then yes, your technical expertise will probably be more important than this bridging role. But this is again the beauty of it. There's so much to do that there is work for whichever aspiration it is that you have.
Okay, great. Another question. Do you think that pharma is an interesting industry for a data scientist?
Yes, I mean, plainly, yes. You have many, many aspects in the pharma world that you can apply data science to. You have the research world, right? The scientists have lots of data, many of them, many not very properly labeled, but they have lots of data. You can do incredible things in terms of drug discovery, for instance. You can understand whether it's possible to diagnose a patient even earlier than you would expect with machine learning. And this is a massive game changer, since very often the actual impact comes in an early diagnosis, right? So you can change the lives of patients in terms of diagnosis. You can do drug discovery, you can go into the commercial side, you can go into finance, you can go pretty much in every aspect in the pharma industry can be changed by using machine learnings. And there are some that are, well, I mean, I'm just, I hope I have enough time to explore all of those areas.
Nice. I hope so because you sound really enthusiastic. So I hope so too. Another question: how and what do you evaluate what people you want to join your team? How you evaluate what are the skills, what are the things that you evaluate for the people that want to join your team?
Well, we would obviously go for the technical skills, right? So depending on the role you're joining or you're applying to, it would be the technical skills are very important. Data science, data engineer, software engineer, front-end developer, whatever, each of them will have their technical skill set. And then it's also a matter of whether the person fits in the team. And here, I cannot really give an answer because we have very different people,
Sure.
and that's a good thing. You want new people to come and also challenge the way you do things and to bring a fresh perspective. So luckily, I think it's a very good thing. I don't have a prototype that you need to match. So this is a good thing. What has worked very well for us is the can-do attitude and a collaborative style. So these are for me must-haves, but there's not really much in terms of a personal trait. You probably want to be a curious person. You want to be able to learn, hopefully, which is so far a feature that's very constant in all of these technical profiles. They all want to grow, so that's never an issue. Yes, and well, obviously want to work in an international environment because this is not even, it's completely out of question for us. You need to speak English for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I totally can understand that. I have another question for you. In your team, do you follow any methodology in order to not discuss and make the best decisions objectively?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the decisions. Since many of the decisions I make are based on well, you can prioritize projects, and for that we don't have a method as such with hard KPIs, but of course there are a few items that we consider in order to prioritize. So one would be the technical complexity, the capacity we currently have, the business impact it has, the interest in terms of data science. So is it something we've done before? Is it something new? We consider all of those, and this would be our methodology to define if we take or we don't take a project. Everything that is related to people is obviously ad hoc. You need to discuss the situation of the person, their willingness to grow, in which direction they want to go, and then this needs to be customized.
Okay, great. Another question. In your case, do you think deep learning is useful, or with machine learning is enough for most of the industries?
So we have a bit of keep it simple policy whenever it's possible, because also so far many of the projects we have had do not require very sophisticated models. So it's simple enough to start with machine learning, and sometimes you can use even statistics like classical statistics and not go much farther ahead.
Yeah.
We are, of course, looking into some projects that should be starting in the near future, and those simply require more complex techniques. So, have they been indispensable to us? No, not yet. Do I hope that we need them? Yes. We are also trying to go into this direction to have also a variety of methods that we use.
Okay, and I think it's the last question. Have you ever faced a situation where data gave insights that the business did not want to believe or apply? And if yes, how did you react?
Yes, we have had this situation, and it is a very interesting one. We had a situation in which the engine that we were using generated a recommendation that business was definitely not comfortable with.
Okay.
And from the data science perspective, it made all the sense in the world that the engine would give this answer. But again, for business, this was completely mind blowing, and they tilt very quickly. No, from data science is fantastic to all of this is it doesn't work. It's wrong. And so what we did was we educated them essentially. We had one workshop to explain why the machine was making this decision. And something that has been very important for us is exactly this change management, right? So the models are very useful. They're very useful to speed up things you do. They're very useful to be quicker in some situations where you would otherwise be doing a more or less repetitive task. However, they don't hold the truth. If you're going to do something smart about your business, the model will never foresee this. And this was something that took us a lot of time to explain. We explained this, we reinforced the message, we provided examples. And slowly but surely, also business started understanding when they could trust the machine and when they simply need to disregard it because they have clarity on why it's coming. But essentially what it took was a lot of time and a lot of explanations on why the machine was saying this and why we realized maybe they just needed to disregard the recommendation.
Okay, thanks. Well, Laura, we have already answered all the questions from the public. I would like to thank you again for your participation as a speaker in this International FemHack. Thank you very much for your time, for your investment. Congratulations, because I think you are doing a great job, and I hope to see you soon. And once again, thank you very much. For the public, in 10 minutes, we will be back with the last conference of the day. And see you now, and bye-bye, Laura, and thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And well, I told my story, but I would be happy to hear the participants' stories also tomorrow in the metaverse. So I will be there and looking forward to hearing from you also.
Sure. Thank you very much, Laura. See you tomorrow then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.